Hello, welcome back. I'm Daniel.
I'm Scott.
Tonight we are going to chat with you about upcoming releases for D&D and Critical Role.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming out.
Yeah.
Between now and March 15th, it's roughly a product every month and a half from WotC.
Yeah.
So
They're really picking up the pace.
Yeah, like I said before the stream, they got to get everything out that's in development before the rules change up.
Yeah. And everything that they've been delaying. And I think there was a lot of thought at WotC, for whatever reason, not to be releasing setting books. They just were dragging their feet.
Yeah.
It was one every year, every 2 years.
Yeah, about a year and a half, I think, was the average.
Yeah. And there was just a lot of players, some with large followings on social media, that were beating the drums for
those classic settings.
Dark Sun, Spelljammer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Planescape, Dragonlance, Ravenloft, which we did eventually get.
Yeah. So I think that's changed, especially with the 50th anniversary coming up.
Yeah.
And them deciding, you know what? Let's do a massive rules release.
Well, I mean, we've got more campaign settings coming out in the next year and a half than we've had since the beginning of 5th edition.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And that's just campaign settings. That's not including other things.
Yeah, not including like Fizzbins.
Well, we just got Wild Beyond the Witchlight.
Yeah.
That's still less than 2 months old right now. And then at the end of this month, the 26th, we have Fizzbins. Now, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, while it is a campaign, it's an adventure, it can also be considered a source book because it goes into the Feywild, and it's like when they did the Rime of the Frost Maiden and did all the rules expansion for environmental.
Yeah.
Or Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and they did all the rules expansion for vehicles.
Yeah.
It's a Feywild book like that. Where I'm not going to say it's essential, but it's a boon to have if you're going to do anything with the Feywild.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some of these planar-specific ones are in response to some of the criticisms against the DMG.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Rose, and that's sort of where I am too.
Yeah.
I basically tuned out some of it. Like Fizzbands. When I heard that, I was like, oh, that's cool. No, I'm not interested. And then I saw some videos with the author.
Yeah.
And he was talking about some of the stuff that he put in, and some of the reasons why he made some of the choices and his philosophy on making this book. And I was like, damn it, now I want it.
Yep.
So.
And that comes out on the 26th of this month.
Yeah. Won't be getting it because I'm going to Dune instead.
That really is your weekend. The 21st is Critical Role, the 22nd is Dune, and the 26th is Fizzbins.
Yeah.
That is like your week, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Just stuff. There was a lot of stuff that he was talking about that I was like, oh, I could use that for a Raku. And once I started thinking that, I was like, God So yeah. But we also have The Legend of Vox Machina releases on the 3rd of February.
Yes.
4th of February, sorry. And then Tal'Dorei Reborn, they're saying late 2021, early 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be after Call of the Netherdeep on March 15th. For several reasons. One, I think they get more potential bounce from the cartoon if they wait until it is done or almost done. And waiting until after March 15th, say April 15th, people will be getting their tax returns, one, or will have gotten them. But also, that's 6 to 8 weeks after it premieres on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I haven't seen anywhere if they're dropping the whole season or if it's going to be a weekly release.
I think it's going to be a weekly release.
Okay.
That's how Amazon typically does their shows.
Yeah. Well, since Disney Plus did it,
it's kind of the way.
Yeah.
And Netflix had done it a couple of times, and so did Hulu.
Yeah.
Hulu was big on that originally.
Well, Hulu was basically all of the big TV people,
Mm-hmm.
and they were doing basically concurrent programming with TV. So
right. Well, I mean, the Hulu originals were not dropped at a season.
Yeah. Speaking of Call of the Netherdeep,
yep.
There was some speculation about who one of the characters on the cover is, and how that character resembles 2 of our previous player characters.
Rose, I agree. I like the weekly release better too because it keeps me from wasting a huge chunk of a day doing nothing but binge watching something. And I just watch an episode, go about to another.
That's actually how I've been watching Squid Game. My daughter and I have been watching it like Friday, Saturday. So, yeah. Although the temptation is there to binge that.
Yeah.
But
I will go down that rabbit hole every time.
Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right with the Tal'Dorei Reborn. The earliest it will be February if they launch it in conjunction with the launching of the show. But I think waiting until April makes more sense.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, like I said, we had the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Fizbin's October 26th. Strixhaven, which is technically another magic setting. It's a setting book.
Yeah.
And there's an adventure there, but it comes out December 7th. Then January 25th, we have the Rules Expansion box set, which is the initial release of Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. And then March 15th, we have the Call of the Netherdeep. So that's the book every 6 weeks.
Yeah. And I made the comment. I was like, "That's like 3rd edition release schedules."
And that's just the ones we know of so far. That's not counting whenever Mordenkainen drops next year on its own outside the box set. 2 brand new campaign settings and 2 classic campaign settings, which will hint at a 3rd campaign setting that will come in 2023. So in the next year and a half, we've got 4 more campaign settings.
Yeah.
From Wizards.
So
or 5 more in the next year and a half.
A lot to be dropping back to back like that, I think.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder what's going on. And whether or not we are going to get a true 6th editions soon.
Yeah.
Which kind of worries me in a way. And I was thinking about it today that whatever next edition we get might be designed to be more compatible with Magic.
Mm.
But yeah. Do you think the character on the Call of the Netherdeep is the offspring of Jester and Ford?
No.
Okay.
I did not even see. Well, when I first saw the art, I looked at it, and I kind of like it, kind of passingly, but I didn't think they would do that. And it, I was like, I could see why people would say that. I thought it was like a sea elf. Especially with them going to the Netherdeep, some kind of aquatic,
I see that. I also didn't think that it was their offspring, mostly because most of the orcs depicted in Volos in the Monster Manual all have blue or gray skin tone. So if you're talking water-themed, a half-orc, that could have just been a half-orc.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where I definitely see the homage.
Yeah, I can see why people would lead to that.
But if you look at the human in the corner,
the opposite one,
yeah,
that looks like Shaggy,
looks like Caleb. That's what, like, if you're looking to find Critical Role characters in that art set, like, yeah, I see Jester. You could definitely see Jester down there.
Yeah,
and Caleb up there.
I can kind of see that.
Yeah.
He's blonde though, and I don't know, like I don't think it's a long reach, but I think it's a reach.
And Rose, I think that's homage is very popular.
Yes, Shaggy. That's what my brain was. Thread so big they had to call in Shaggy.
Who they've played with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but something occurred to me today. Digging through, well, not digging, but just having YouTube on while I was at work.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody cut together all of the Campaign 3 character mentions.
Oh, yeah.
From talks and the episodes and panels and stuff like that.
Yeah, I watched that too.
And I realized that by the time Campaign 3 airs, they will have had almost 30 weeks since Liam said he told Sam what his character was going to be.
Okay. After that campaign clip, I really want to see Marisha play the Barbarian. And it would fit with her, strong PvP class choices. Barbarian's up there. And she could do the Elemental Barbarian, since they're in Marquette, and do the fire with the sands. And that would stick with her Elemental love.
Yeah. She can even do the Fire Ashari.
Yeah. And in one of those clips, she said specifically that the Half-Orc Barbarian was what she was going with and developing before she decided on bow.
Yeah.
So it was already an in-development character for a campaign.
Yeah. So yeah,
I'm here for it.
and in theory, depending on how far ahead they're recording, they could have already played the first session, or are playing the first session this week.
I think they've already played the first session, especially since there's only like 10 more days before, you know.
Yeah.
My feeling is it's 2 to 3 weeks out.
Yeah. And that's what it was during the pandemic.
Yeah. And I think they're just keeping to that schedule, and so they've probably got 2 to 3 episodes in the bag.
Yeah. And I think my saying that we might have an 8th rotating cast member, I think is seeming more and more likely.
What makes you think that?
Specifically, their comments about new storytellers being involved in this campaign. And a lot of people were like, are we going to have different game masters? And Matt had to clarify, no, I'm the DM.
Right.
But that to me screams guest cast. And like they will have that 8th slot at the table filled.
All the time?
Yeah.
So you think it's going to be more frequent?
Yes.
See, my brain is just thinking it's going to go back to campaign 1 levels of guest interaction, where we have recurring people, like Will Friedle and Mary Elizabeth were in campaign 1, where we saw them multiple,
I think Matt wants to do a collective big thing like he did with the Battle of Vecna.
Yeah.
And the only way you get that is to have those people in more often. And I think based on how Matt organizes his campaigns and how they sort of block them themselves, each arc we will see 1 or 2 guest players.
Okay.
So or even though with pre-recording they can get around this somewhat of people having to leave to go do something else.
Right.
But if they did that, I mean, that's how we got a lot of those characters to begin with.
Yeah.
So.
The one thing I want to mention that I loved, I saw on Twitter, I forgot who put it, but they their only one for the Legend of Vox Machina was for Ashley Birch to voice Anna Ripley, so that she can have played 2 characters that have killed Taliesin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see them rather than just one game or so be there for like 3-4 sessions,
And that's why I mean, like, because if they have 1 or 2 per arc, which usually is between 5 and 12 episodes,
right?
They would be there about 4 episodes each.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and they have enough people in their orbit that have come on that they have a rich cast to choose from.
Yes.
And like easily they could do, say, 6 for 3 arcs, which is usually just before Matt begins the climb into the climax, where you can then start having them reappear.
Yeah.
And that's also a way potentially for Matt to further build out elements of the story that the main players aren't necessarily going to engage with. Or some of the world building that he's going to put in the next Exandria source book.
Yeah.
Which will cover Marquette.
Yeah, the Marquette.
Even though Call of the Netherdeep does have some stuff in Ank'Harel.
Yeah, it introduces, according to the solicit, it introduces Marquette.
Yeah.
But there will be. I'm assuming the deal they got with Wizards, which brought us, Wildmount and this Netherdeep, is at least a 3-book deal.
Yeah.
And the 3rd book will be covering Marquette.
Yeah, and I don't expect that one to be released until after the 50th anniversary slate of books. In fact, I can see that being the first new book after.
Yeah, I can see that being like early to mid, like May, June of 2024.
Yeah. Like I would venture the material's all been written. Just because, like it occurred, like I did the math. They've had over 30 weeks.
Yeah.
Matt has had the campaign 3 conversations for over 30 weeks and has had that lead up to be working on it, plus whatever he did for Call of the Netherdeep.
Yeah.
The stuff that they did for Tal'Dorei Reborn. There's a lot of stuff that Matt could also have been working on for Marquette.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I expect most of it's already written.
At least a rough draft.
Yeah.
A finished outline and a rough draft, at least.
Yeah. But yeah, when I did that, I was thinking, damn, what could I do with 30 weeks of run-up on a campaign?
Yeah.
Because normally my run-up is I pitch one week, we make characters, and we start playing the next.
Yeah. That is typical.
So, yeah, I was just like, man, that's crazy to think about that. I mean, I know when they were broadcasting the game, like for 15 to 20 of those weeks, Matt wasn't doing probably anything for Campaign 3 other than having the conversations with his players.
Right.
That they are going to go into, asking about backstory, any details about their hometowns. Because Matt lets his players create a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm personally I'm interested for Call of the Netherdeep. I don't think there will be huge spoilers, but I do think there will be spoilers for Marquette, at least, who people are, But I'm mostly excited because it's going to pick up plots that weren't picked up, especially in Campaign 2.
Yeah.
It talks about a forgotten hero whose deeds have gone, or have been, and name has been forgotten. We had that instance both with, what's his name? The Punished. Messed with Yasha. But Oban. His whole crew was people who were like that.
Yeah.
Caduceus's backstory, all 3 families, split up the unnamed hero.
Yeah.
And then it talks about the moon Rudius watching over and the stuff. So we're going to get into that moon lore that was touched on and then never followed.
Yeah.
All of those plot threads, I think, are being woven into this campaign.
That's fair.
And so that's going to answer questions for me that we brought up when those things were initially touched on. What could these mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And like the time that Matt's had to prepare with Rose is also one of the things that excites me about Campaign 3. I kind of hope we get that they've been together a long time.
Yeah.
Because that's something we haven't had.
Yeah, and Liam said that.
Yeah.
I hope we've like been to get part of an entertainment troupe for
20 years. Yeah. And it will also help prompt some of the backstory discussion.
Mm-hmm.
That was really sort of danced around overly much, I think, in campaign 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we don't have that much longer to wait to find out.
No.
They also haven't released any character art.
Yeah.
Beforehand.
No character art, not even the silhouette. Although tomorrow morning we may have something. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Pacific time, Matt is doing live on YouTube the history of Exandria. It's kind of a primer for newer people to the first season 3.
So they don't have to sit through 800 hours of content.
Yeah. So, I mean, somewhere in that they could be like, here you go, bonus surprise, the silhouette, or give some hint as to something about campaign 3, some teaser for campaign 3.
Maybe. But
if they don't do it there, they're not going to do it at all. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. I tend to think it's not going to happen at all. Just feeling that I have. If they were going to do it, they would have done it already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the UA?
Yeah. I mean, let's get into it. We're gonna have to talk about the campaign settings. We're getting 3. I mean, we're talking about stuff coming up. We're getting 3 classic ones between 2022 and 2023.
Yeah. The UA was Travelers of the Multiverse.
Yep.
And it covered racial options.
6 races.
Yep. The GIF, Astral Elf, Autonome, Plasmoids, Hedo-Z, and Thrycreen.
Yes.
And
Yes, Rose, that's exactly why I want them to reveal it too. I had so much fun with that first one. I think I got a third of them right, and there were some people that got them all right.
Yeah.
But it's just fun to do that speculation.
This made me laugh when I saw it because Snoopy, Ace, in chat when he's here, Tim, asked if he could play a Thrycreen or expressed interest in playing a Thrycreen. And I sidestepped it by saying, they're a monstrous race. They can't really, there's nothing out anywhere. And now there is.
Now there is.
Although I have to say, I don't necessarily like the design.
No.
There are some things that I would do differently. Principally, the carapace. I like that as an action, you get advantage on stealth checks. That sort of tracks with the monster stat block. Although the monster stat block, it isn't an action. It's always. And it makes them a little more playable in non-desert environments, making it chameleon.
Yeah.
But it gives them a natural armor
Yes.
13 plus Dex.
Yes.
It should not be Dex.
I was really wanting it to be plus con.
Yeah. That's what I would do.
And that tracks with the Loxodon.
Yep.
They did that with the Loxodon.
Yep.
The Loxodon was 12 plus con mod, but got a plus 2 to con.
Yeah.
Racially. At 12 or 13 plus con would have been great.
Yeah. I think I would have done con just because it's their exoskeleton. It's their skeleton.
Yeah.
That to me says Dex is less important in that equation. Unless you just give them the Barbarian con plus Dex.
Yeah.
But
no.
It's not really thematic. The telepathy instead of jump also kind of threw me, but not really.
It kind of threw me at first, but then when because they originated in Dark Sun, where they were known for the jumping, but they were also heavily in, especially the AD&D Spelljammers and the telepathy, the hive mind.
Yeah, well, and they've always they're led by psychics, like the higher ups in Threadcrane Society are all psychic.
They're all. It is a psychic caste system.
So,
and I don't think it would have broken them as a race to have added, like, the Herongon's jump ability. If your movement is not at 0, you can use a bonus action to jump 5 times your proficiency modifier in feet. That doesn't cost extra movement.
And see, I would have just given them standing leap. It uses your movement.
Yeah.
It will provoke attacks of opportunity.
Yeah.
But you can jump 20 feet without moving beforehand.
Yeah. And that would be 100% fine with me too. I don't think either of those would break the race balance-wise.
Yeah.
Even if they just added it to what's already there. I probably would have limited the telepathy, though.
Yes.
To 60 feet. Either 30 or 60. Those are the 2 standard increments for that most telepathic creatures get.
And see, I would have made it one way.
Okay.
Like the Ghostwise Halfling.
Yeah. And that would be fine too, you know.
The Astral Elf, I wasn't wowed.
I wasn't wowed, but I was intrigued. It's, instead of a sub-race of elf, it's its own race.
Yeah.
They do have some elf things like the trance and stuff. But they get a choice of 3 cantrips: light, dancing lights, or sacred flame. Which, especially since people tend to play dark vision, like I can see perfectly in the dark.
Yeah.
You're not going to choose dancing lights or light.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need it with dark vision the way most people play dark vision.
Yeah.
And then they have, what else do they have? They had a once per long rest, and I put it on par with the Orcish Resilience, but when they actually have to go down, and then when they succeed a saving throw, they heal their proficiency modifier, I think, plus intelligence.
Yeah. That was interesting. And I think that was the only thing that really wowed me. The once per long, when they finish a long rest, they can change out tool proficiencies.
They have 2 proficiencies. They can be with a weapon or a tool, and they can change it every long rest.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't wowed. Some of the cosmetic stuff that they talk about is interesting. How their eyes have an inner light to them. That kind of thing. But it's like elves are already super long-lived. When they're on the astral sea, they're immortal. I don't know. I didn't have anything there that sort of grabbed me. And the Auto Gnome, I had sort of a similar thought on.
So the Auto Gnome, and I get why they made it only small, because the Rock Gnome's making in their image. I wish it had been, because why couldn't the Rock Gnomes have been like, I need a big one, you know? Why can't they be small or medium, your choice? Like the Herringon is, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's basically what the Warforged should have been, you know? You get to be a construct. You still get to heal from spells.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so the Auto Gnome has a few things that I find mechanically interesting. One, the Mending cantrip, and I think this is a beautiful way to solve the conundrum of does the Mending cantrip heal you?
Mm-hmm.
It itself does not, but it allows you to spend a hit dice.
Yep.
I love that as the compromise.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Because, like, that essentially gives 1 minute short rest for the construct.
Yep.
Which was like
which ties in great with the Sentry's Rest.
Yeah. I loved it. So just letting you know, Snoopy Ace, that is how the Bending cantrip will affect Warforged on Araku. Same thing.
Sounds good.
But the other thing in the Auto Gnome that I enjoyed, because it is reflective of a lot of the mechanics that I used for the Origin system.
Okay.
The plus 1d4.
Yeah, the built for success. You can add a d4 to one attack roll, ability check, or saving throw you make. You can do so after seeing the d20, but before the effects are resolved, and a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest.
Yeah. And whereas in the Origin system, like with the elves, they have 1d4 to their perception because of their keen senses, instead of proficiency in perception.
Right.
So, and I did that with a few of the racial abilities. The Tabaxi for stealth and athletics, I think, get the d4 as well. Yeah. I don't limit it to proficiency times per day, but it's much more narrow. It's 1 or 2 skills.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can do it on attack rolls, saving throws, or ability checks, that's huge.
Yeah. Because you could use it on your initiative if you wanted to.
Yeah. But yeah, that was one of the big things that I was like, huh. My design philosophy seems to be reflected quite a lot on this.
Yeah. The one that stood out to me, and not necessarily in a positive way, was the GIF. GIFF GIF, the Hippo people. Because I think they stepped on the toes of the Barbarian with this racial build. And there are things about the GIF that they could have given them instead that would have made it more distinct. So the GIF, they get their medium, hippo people, walking speed 30 feet, swim speed equal to their walk speed. That's great. Damage dealer, like a hippopotamus in a crystal workshop, you're naturally adept at damaging things. When you roll a 1 in damage die for a melee attack, you can reroll the die. You can do so no more than once per turn. So that's
Savage Attacker.
Yeah, Savage Attacker. Yeah. And then the Hippo build, you have advantage on strength-based ability checks and strength saving throws. In addition, your count is 1 size larger when determining carrying capacity. That is like 2/3 of rage. And it's always on.
Yeah.
It's not a limited times per day. It's not only when you're attacking or being dealt damage. And you once per turn you get to up your damage basically. So you're perma rage without any drawbacks.
Yeah. And I have a feeling that the advantage on strength checks may end up being folded into powerful build.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and to me, that means Rage is going to change with the rules update. Because if you have a dozen races, half a dozen races that have powerful build, so they're perma raging, what's the point in being a barbarian? What's the point in rage?
The extra rage damage and reckless attack and unarmed defense.
Okay, you can reckless attack without rage. I mean, this, but it basically the key thing about barbarians is their rage. Rage is going to have to do something.
But yeah, Rose, power creep is blossoming.
I would really have loved for them to have. So the GIF, canonically, at least previous editions, are firearms experts. They are, one of their big things is and travelers, spacefarers. So giving them navigators tools and proficiency with firearms. They could have done things like that. And I know you don't like racial proficiencies.
Well, yeah, I mean, that aside, but the problem with giving them firearm proficiencies is not every world has them.
Yes, but Spelljammer has them.
Yeah.
They're made for Spelljammer. Or something to the mechanical, even if it's, you know what I mean? If they could have leaned into that aspect of them instead of the brutish and stepping on the toes of the barbarian's rage. It's basically an FU to the barbarian signature ability, in my mind.
Okay.
And so either rage has to change, or they shouldn't have done this, in my opinion.
Okay. So the example to the power creep is the Hadozi.
Yes.
Interesting ways that they are implementing the glide.
Yeah.
And the prehensile feet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think.
I mean, you could argue in the same way you could argue the Hadozi steps on the thief subclass of the rogue. They automatically get a climbing speed. They automatically get the bonus action use an object.
Yeah.
But that's a subclass, not a base class.
Yeah. But yeah, that was basically it for them.
And they get a better slow fall than monks do.
Yeah.
Because as a reaction, it's just damage is 0.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the most powerful thing about them.
Yeah, but tieflings can get wings if they give up their magic.
Yeah.
And they have fire resistance. And
oh yeah.
I mean,
they're not. The Hadozi aren't overly powerful.
Yeah. But the most intriguing for me were the plasmoids.
Yes.
And not just because, of them being plasmoids. The creature type being ooze is what I was excited about.
Yes. You can be medium or small, so you can be the little plasma ball from Treasure Planet.
So
although that would technically be tiny. But.
Yeah. This is so adjacent to being a founder from Deep Space Nine.
Oh, yeah.
There's just a couple things, 1 or 2 clauses even, in some of the abilities to make them changelings from DS9. And just that alone, I was like, oh man. But even with like just taking that bog standard, if you did a warlock, Mask of Many Faces.
Yeah. I was just going to say that.
Yeah. You could do it. Like there's different ways that you could do it with the plasmoid as written.
Or any spellcaster in the Fate Touch and take your first level as Disguise Self. I mean, it'll be limited by spell slots, but
yeah. Yeah. That's what excited me about the plasmoids. So I was like, oh man,
can make Odo.
I can make Odo. Which would go really well with the characters that I have based on Garrick.
Yeah.
And by go really well, I mean probably not like each other. But
I mean, you don't even have to become a warlock. You just take any spellcaster with the Eldritch Invocation feat.
Okay.
Can get at will Disguise Self.
Yeah. The only limiting thing is they can't turn into objects.
True.
And that's what would make them truly a founder. Because they could turn into an object.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But I was like, when I was reading that, I was like, man, this is cool. So of all of them, the Plasmoids was the one that I was most interested in as a player. And not really anything that they wrote. It's just like, and like the fluff text of what the Plasmoids were. It was just like, ooh, yeah, no, this is a great way to do this.
Yeah.
I was like, man, why didn't I think of this?
And I do like how they fixed the squeezing, because it's very similar to what they had originally given the fairy, but then dropped for giving the fairy enlarge reduce. And that was the you can squeeze through a space as narrow as an inch wide, provided you are wearing and carrying nothing, because you can't.
Yeah.
You also have advantage on ability checks you make to initiate or escape a grapple. Whereas the fairy could just do it in full gear, you know.
Yeah.
That limiting into you can't be carrying things.
Yeah.
So.
But with prestidigitation or any transmuter ability, you can just make equipment on the other side, whatever you need.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of the reasons I love prestidigitation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've done that. I remember a game we were trapped in a room filling with gas, and I made the check, and I just, with prestidigitation, created the key to unlock it because we couldn't find the damn thing.
Yep. Yep.
And half the table was like, wait, you can do that with that spell? I'm like, yeah, why do you think it's so amazing?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think sometimes the UA changes to the book.
Yeah.
The Thri-Kreen might, just because I think that jump is a huge oversight.
I think the survey is going to get a lot of comments about why don't the Thri-Kreen have jumping ability.
Yeah. And I don't know that they necessarily need the telepathy, although before the show I was thinking about it, and just because there's Thri-Kreen on Raku.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about ways to mechanically express how this creature is alien.
Mm.
And one of the things that I thought about is because they have an exoskeleton, they don't have the ability to emote.
Yeah.
Physically, in a facial feature. And I was like, well, ants communicate through pheromones, chemicals.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh man, what if Thri-Kreen nonverbal communication is all chemical based?
Yeah.
And so, like, it would be frustrating as heck for that Thri-Kreen to interact with another non-Thri-Kreen person.
Mm-hmm.
Because that person doesn't have the receptors to get their emotional state, and their spoken language would not have, or probably would not have, words for emotional state.
Yeah.
The different emotions.
Because the
It
words
would
you
just
say would
be chemical.
coincide with the chemical you're emitting.
Yeah. Yeah. And they don't have the mouth parts to speak other languages.
And I honestly, I think that's why they gave them the telepathy. Because...
Yes, it makes inter-party communication easier.
Yes.
And
I would have liked for it to be one way and limited to 60 feet, and then give them either the standing leap or the Herringon leap.
Mm.
And, that's how I would have done the race.
Yeah. Sorry, my thought went away with the sharp pain in my neck. I guess the other thing that sort of what changed my mind about fizz bands, one of the things, getting back to racial stuff, is the idea that half dragons don't have to be a result of mating.
Right.
That they can be a result of just the magic around a dragon's lair. I was like, oh man. Yeah,
and bards everywhere now have an excuse.
Yeah. So I have not yet used a half dragon in an encounter on a Raku.
But now it's coming, Snoopy.
Mostly because I didn't know exactly how to fit them in.
Right.
But now that you can just remove any notion of mating, means that I can play around with that more.
Yeah.
So that was exciting. And also would fill in potentially where the drakes come from. And in Fizzbands, there's also, I guess, a mount Draco form. I can't remember what he called it. But if you have Summon Greater Steed, you can summon this dragon.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So that was some of the stuff. The Gem Dragons and Gem Dragonborn, I could take it or leave it. Yeah.
Personally, I always like the Gem Dragons. I think it's because they're psionic in nature, and I do like the psionics. And anytime they take steps towards perfecting that psionics, it gets us one step closer to Dark Sun.
Fair. Last few minutes to discuss. And I meant to just talk about this earlier when we were talking about Call of the Netherdeep.
Okay.
Where do you think Exandria's version of Innsmouth is?
Honestly, if we hadn't spent so much... Honestly, I think it's near Stillbend. Like, something about Stillbend just makes me think Innsmouth. But it's somewhere there on the east coast of Tal'Dorei.
Interesting.
Where it's kind of backwoods, not a lot of, towns are sparser.
And see, I was thinking on the coast of Xhorhas.
Okay.
Because Jorhas is a place that's easier to hide mutant creatures coming from the deep.
I can see that.
And if the adventure starts
in Jorhas,
in
the west of Jorhas, and then leads to Ankh over the Netherdeep. Yeah, that 100% makes sense. Something about Stillbend always, like, just the name and that it's a small town near a swamp, always said Innsmouth / Deliverance to me. And I know it's not that because we've seen little snippets here and there and in the comic book and stuff, but it just says that to me. So I think it's somewhere over on that part of Tal'Dorei.
I mean, I get Deliverance, for sure, for Stillbend. I was going to say another movie, but Hard Target popped into my head. And I don't know why. Because it's on the bayou. There's a couple scenes out on the bayou, and that's the only reason it popped into my head. That was Van Damme, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of those two places.
Okay.
Or both. There could be more than one Smith type.
I also have to say that I appreciate attaching the Cthulhu mythos to the deep ocean.
Yes.
Because that seems to be what this is.
Yeah.
Calling to.
Leading to the Netherdeep, which is, in the trailer's words, a cross between the far realms and the deep ocean.
Yeah.
The sunken city of Relay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And especially since they just recently got sponsored by Peterson Press to promote the Cthulhu book that they put out.
For 5th edition D&D, yeah. Cthulhu and D&D, yeah. I hadn't put that together, but yes, that makes sense. Yeah. I don't know, do we want to try to talk about what we're going to do next week? Or should we just do another chatting video like this?
What do you guys think? I think we need to...
Oh, I know one thing we could do next week.
Okay.
I could actually practice the riff that I wrote in high school that I was going to pitch to you.
Sure.
For a theme song, an opening song for us. And maybe I can preview it next week.
Yeah, let's do that. Of course, if there's any news, like I said, there might be. It's the last chance for it. Tomorrow morning, we'll cover that, of course.
Yep.
Or anything else that comes out between now and then. Especially regarding Critical Role.
Yeah, I tuned my guitar and I have it sitting here just in case we didn't have, like we had extra time on this episode.
Yeah.
But I was nervous about doing it because I haven't played it in 5 years.
Right on.
So I'll practice it between now and then.
Okay, that sounds good
for you guys. And then of course that Thursday is Critical Role, and we will be speculating on Campaign 3 the week after that.
We will get back into the heart of wild speculating about Critical Role.
Yep.
And we'll have all new things to speculate.
Until then, we'll see you guys next week.